What in the world is going on here? So I do have an entire segment about these plasmoids, but can somebody tell me what is going on in New York's underground? We have multiple individuals going into manholes, and yet even though it's illegal to do so, their identities have never been revealed, they've never been arrested, even though we have cameras everywhere, like it's some type of dystopian 1984 society. Prior to this, there were also other individuals going into a tunnel where they took out a mattress with a stain on it. But this newest story involving tunnels in New York really takes the cake.
Mayor, can you give us a word? What's happening?
Some young girls, some kids, they were in the park, they got into the culvert of the creek and they started exploring, and then they ended up not really knowing where they were and they got a little alarmed. As far as I know from the police, I just got here a few minutes ago. As far as I know from the police, everybody's been accounted for. Nobody's missing. They're about to get them all on their buses, take them back home.
Mayor Joe Rand, Nyack, thank you very much. Guys, get out of the way. There we go. Get over there.
Tony, they're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Guys, come on.
You're gonna wait. Let them get out first. That's what I'm gonna get.
We're gonna walk this way, right?
Okay, go this way.
All the way.
Come on.
To the corner. To the corner. To the corner. One line.
Kim's on the line. Try on the line. Move him up a little bit. Move up a little bit. Move up.
When have you ever heard or seen anything like this before? And the official explanation is what you heard from the mayor. These 71 plus girls supposedly on a school trip to Nyack Memorial Park, wandering around the park, see this cave, and all of them say, hey, let's go in, let's go further and further and further, until they came out the other end of the tunnel. Now that's being reported by CBS, but I think that's a lie. Oddly enough, but not surprising, a lot of these news agencies are leaving out some very important details or scrubbing it all together. For example, this was only known because a woman at a restaurant, she heard a bunch of kids' voices coming through the drainage grate on the patio floor. This is when she proceeded to call 911. A lot of major news agencies, like for example, this one right here from CBS, they're not mentioning the 911 call or these voices being heard. You also have some news agencies like this one right here from Rockland News referring to these teens as young adults. Now yes, the minimum age to be considered a young adult in New York is 18, but we don't know if all these teenagers are 18. Sounds like some of these news agencies are trying to make it sound like there were not children down there. And if we were to take their story for face value, I can see one or two of them wandering off and getting lost, but over 70 of them? No, something odd, something very, very odd is happening all over the world underground, but especially under New York. But talking about the underground, I saw this off Matrika's channel.
Can somebody tell me why I hear gurgling sounds in my yard? And the other day I thought I was losing my mind. But you're going to be able to hear it, even on my phone. Just hold on just a minute. I'm going to let you hear it.
That is a terrifying sound to hear coming from your house. Either that's a septic tank, some type of sinkhole is about to open up, or it could even be them drilling below, doing work below, some type of boring for more tunnels. But moving on, what was this captured above the waters over in Mexico? This video comes from the Paranormal Chick.
It appears that sightings of UFOs are not decreasing, and in fact, they are increasing. Take a look at this footage that was captured by a witness in Mexico. They noticed this orb down below them, directly above the shoreline. But the thing is, it's not just a typical orb. This one looks like that star, the spinning wheel, and they have no idea what it's doing. It's almost like it's gathering information. And that's what a lot of these UFOs appear to be doing. They appear to be hovering over things such as the ocean and just there for moments, as if they're taking readings. Makes you wonder. Take a look at this footage, comment below, tell us what you think.
There are a few theories, anywhere from it being AI, I mean, we can't take AI off the table, or some kind of 3D printed technology, to even an angel, a biblically accurate angel, or even a plasmoid. Which, what I'm going to talk about next, these plasmoids might even be angels themselves or fallen ones. So, does anybody remember when Evil George Costanza Rose said this?
Just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world.
Now, I'm sure you remember this because this video gets played a lot, but anytime I use this video as an example, I always make sure to save that date, write that date down, July 13th, 2030, because he did not pull that date out of thin air. When it comes to the so-called powers that be and those that are connected to them, there's no such thing as randomness, especially when it comes to numbers, dates, and time. The reason why I'm talking about this video again happens to be, if you're not aware, in a couple weeks, CERN, they will be shutting down their Large Hadron Collider on June 29th. You know, the thing that a lot of people blame a lot of strange stuff on, the Mandela effect, the merging of realities, why things in general just seem so weird lately. There were even news articles that came out that CERN stated that when the Large Hadron Collider was activated, a fourth dimensional entity had crossed over, which they called a neutrino, or a ghost, or a specter. But they said it was just a particle, bro. According to CERN, the Large Hadron Collider will be shutting down to receive its biggest upgrade it has ever had, and it'll be dubbed the High Luminosity Large Hadron Collider, smashing particles together at a rate 10 times higher than that of the original design. They will awaken the High Luminosity Collider and do this experiment 4 years from the date that they shut it down, which will put it at June 29th, 2030. That would put it 2 weeks to the day prior to July 13th, 2030, the date Geordie Rose gave in that video. But instead of these things coming from space in a spaceship, in a mothership, is it possible they will enter in another way, possibly a portal, summoning an entity or entities over? But here's the thing, back in January of 2026, prior to us getting all this news about scientists, plasma scientists, mysteriously disappearing or ending up deceased, these plasma scientists over in New York took a particle accelerator much weaker than the one they're creating now with this high luminosity one, smashed together beams of gold nuclei and created a plasmoid which lasted much longer than the actual impact itself. If they can do that with the original design, imagine what they can do with something much more powerful, and on top of that, possibly these data centers also contributing to that power. And in theory, it's not taken off the table that all these data centers around the world, not just in the United States where there's like over 5,000 or 6,000 of them, could combine their power. And in theory, all this power could be contributed to something like the High Luminosity Collider. So imagine with all that power shot at one time, what they could rip open, what they could usher in, summon over, or even create. They could, like Geordie Rose said, bring in the mothership, which is not too far off given the fact that the United States Navy was doing just that with plasma. They were creating UFOs. The missing general, William McCaslin, who has dealt heavily with plasma with directed energy weapons, pulse power, and advanced aerospace propulsion programs, came to an understanding, at least on his X account, that plasma and plasmoids were linked to demons. Former Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonge, who's heavy into UFOs, emailed John Podesta, who was the former White House Chief of Staff under Bill Clinton, to set up a meeting between them and General McCaslin and his wife, and supposedly this was said.
I was sitting there, he leans across the table, and this is the very first words that were said to me. It was the Cold War, and every single day we lived under the threat of nuclear war. Every single day we believed and really thought in the deepest part of our souls that nuclear war could happen at any given moment. And then he stops, and he goes, and somewhere in those years, and he looked me in the eye, he goes, we found a life form. And everything that we did and every decision that we made with that life form was because of the consciousness at that time.
So apparently whatever they were working on that required nuclear power, and plasma is heavily intertwined with nuclear power, they stumbled upon life or an entity they were making decisions with. So again, imagine what they can do today with the power, not just of this high luminosity collider, but with these data centers as well that are also directly connected to plasma. These data centers are under extreme strict NDAs. You'll never find anybody come out and say, I work for a data center, here's my proof, here's what's going on. Maybe a lot of these plasma scientists were taken out, so the true purpose behind these data centers and what they're doing does not get exposed, or perhaps they're working on something big in secret. And it's not just me saying this either. We also had an OpenAI executive say just that they're using these data centers to open up gateways and portals, and he called it very dangerous stuff. We have a couple data centers out there that are oddly enough being powered by cerebrospinal fluid, which is basically blood plasma. Perhaps the AI these data centers are actually are really for quote-unquote alien intelligence or an quote-unquote alien invasion. But these things are not aliens, that's the lie. These things are interdimensional. Just like they told us previously, they had a glimpse of that fourth dimensional entity crossing over. Then yesterday, David Grush was on camera saying this.
I certainly don't have the compendium. It's a continuum from corporeal bipedal type life to, what I would consider like sentient plasmoid life, but there are several that the U.S. government is aware of. What I would consider like sentient plasmoid life.
These sentient plasmoids just sound like another name for entities or energetic beings. If one were to look at this through a biblical lens, a biblical aspect, even the word seraphim angels, the word seraphim means to burn or the burning ones. When these scientists were conducting this experiment with this particle accelerator over in New York, colliding these beams of gold nuclei, they said they created this fireball of plasma, and this fireball is what they consider to be this plasmoid. So if certain angels are described to be energetic fiery beings, then that connection to sentient plasmoids or plasma can be made. Even outside of Christianity, even talking about Islam, the jinn, what would be considered Satan's equivalent, was said to be made of a smokeless fire. But going back to the seraphim and angels like them, if that means that the seraphim and angels like them had fallen, which they did, and they are energetic fiery beings, then that must mean that there are fallen ones that are energetic beings. And if brought over here by the powers of these data centers and CERN, things like that, is it possible they could also be given a form through robotics? Given the fact that plasma is formless, I guess it could. So they know exactly what they're dealing with. They know exactly what they have been making decisions and deals with and gaining knowledge from. How many times have we heard them say through interviews, even JD Vance saying that these quote-unquote aliens are demonic, and they're saying this for a reason. They're giving us the truth in plain sight. Even when they say they're interdimensional now.
But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want.
So where is Geordie Rose now ever since making that years-old video? Well, isn't it funny that after being the frontman, the face of D-Wave Quantum Computers, Demon Wave, he now works with embodied robots, meaning he's making robotic bodies that you can put the AI into. These are ritualists through and through, just like the ritualists before them. And not just Geordie Rose, but also think about Trump's Genesis mission as well, which focused on the advancement of AI, but also the rapid acceleration of these data centers. But what was also announced at the same time as this Genesis mission was Jeff Bezos' Project Prometheus, which also has to do about building robotics and putting the AI into these robotics. Prometheus and the Book of Genesis both heavily connect to fallen ones, and knowledge gained from these fallen ones. After this executive order of this Genesis mission went through, data centers were popping up left and right all over the place.
The elite and the government are opening up portals. They're summoning demons, all with AI data centers.
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but at the same exact time, it makes sense why this guy right here openly stated that AI is summoning the demon.
The artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Doesn't work out.
And it also makes sense why he also spoke about how the new god is coming from Memphis, Tennessee.
I see. Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt.
Right. Yeah, you're bringing what?
Perhaps that's where our new god will come from.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Yeah, I wish that was funny. Yeah, okay, so I want to talk to you about alignment.
I wish that was funny.
Yeah,
right.
Memphis, Tennessee, where his Colossus supercomputer dwells. I guess it's just a coincidence that all these names have something to do with ancient pagan deities. As we can see, the Colossus of Rhodes was a massive bronze statue to the Greek sun god Helios. You don't say. Now, the more you look, the more you're going to find these ancient pagan deity names everywhere, as we can see with Meta's massive multi-gigawatt artificial intelligence data centers named Hyperion and Prometheus. Hyperion is a first-generation titan in Greek mythology, ruling as the god of the heavenly light. And of course, Prometheus is the titan whose name means forethought, revered as the champion and creator of mankind. He is best known for defying Zeus to bring humanity the gift of fire. AKA, Prometheus is Lucifer, where the name Lucifer literally means light bringer or light bearer. And now it's not just the AI data centers using these names, it's also the financial institutions, as we can see with Apollo Global Management. Where go figure, Apollo Global Management is aggressively financing the artificial intelligence boom. And of course, as you know, in ancient Greek religion and mythology, Apollo is one of the Olympian deities. The same exact deity that is painted above Mr. Golden Dawn's head right here. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Nothing to see here. Now, it's not just Apollo Global Management. We also have Blackstone working on a $36 billion deal for Anthropic. And of course, just coincidentally in the occult, the black cube or the black stone is a potent esoteric symbol representing structure, the material world, time, and hidden wisdom. Oh yeah, and of course, it is most prominently associated with the planet Saturn. You know, Saturn or Kronos in Roman mythology, who is known for the Golden Age. The Golden Age, you don't say. Where have I heard that before?
Proudly proclaim that the golden age of America is upon us.
Nothing to see here. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The more you look into it, the more you're going to see these names everywhere. It's because we live in a spiritual war right now. Ephesians chapter 6, that we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against these principalities in the heavenly realm. Individuals who currently rule over this world at the moment, who are into the occult, worship these deities, these ancient gods of the past that they use their names to name everything around us to then give worship to them. It is blatantly in our face everywhere, so it's not surprising to me if the possibility of these AI data centers being used as portals for demons, it could add perfectly into the book of Revelation chapter 9 of Apollyon, the destroyer, the king of the bottomless pit being opened and then demons being released. I wonder if that will have anything to do with the AI data centers and CERN possibly. Who knows? It's all speculation with that, obviously, but it's not being lost on me, just seeing the names everywhere, and you can see the spiritual side behind it. So now with that being said,
that great video came from Matt, or Shepherd from the Messiah, and he made a great connection to how a lot of these major data centers are named after old gods. And there's that CERN connection he sees as well, which is theorized to sit on the Temple of Apollo. But talking about the names of old gods, the name Atlas has been used a lot, and I didn't know, but over at CERN, sits on top of the Large Hadron Collider is a giant particle detector, and this giant particle detector just happens to be named Atlas, or the Atlas experiments. Let's not forget too that data centers are low frequency, low vibrational things as well, given the fact that they emit something called infrasound. It is believed that infrasound is very dangerous to health. This video comes from The Unraveling.
2 years ago, Time magazine sent a reporter to Granbury, Texas. That reporter interviewed about 40 people who live near a Bitcoin mining facility. And those people were experiencing symptoms that they believed were a result of that facility. The people that he interviewed were experiencing things like migraines, insomnia, vertigo, nausea, anxiety, and hearing loss. He interviewed a 77-year-old pastor who stopped sleeping and lost hearing in both ears and ended up in an emergency room with heart failure after many sleepless nights. Now, the reality is we do not know if the facility actually caused that to happen to those people. Correlation is not necessarily causation, but the fact that Time was investigating this as far as 2 years ago is bringing up what is now being reported as increasing concern around low frequency noise. Now, the concerns around this that Time was investigating and that many investigations are now starting to look at is something called ILFN, or infrasound and low frequency noise. These are basically sound frequencies that are on the lower end of the human hearing range, or not even in the human hearing range at all. So in other words, it's being emitted, but you can't actually hear that noise. Now, what we're beginning to sort of try to understand is it looks like the cooling systems on these large data centers actually produce a lot of energy that is in that range. A 2026 study showed that exposure to infrasound raised cortisol levels in participants who did not know that the sound was present. Another research study is looking at cardiovascular effects in chronic low-frequency noise exposure. Now, one of the problems with this is that we measure sound in what is called A-rated decibels, and that is largely based on the human hearing systems. But these systems are producing and emitting energy below what we traditionally measure in how we consider things like industrial buildouts, the sound that is produced by these facilities. So in other words, a facility like this could be saying legally and truthfully that their facility is within the thresholds required by the systems we currently use to measure them. But it's what we are not measuring that candidly we just don't know. And I want to be very clear. A lot of this is just we need more data, we need more research, and we need better tools to measure it. But even while we're trying to get more information about these low frequency and infrasound, we know that some of these facilities are using natural gas turbines to generate power, and those systems can generate noise at 105 decibels. To give you an example, a chainsaw is going to run at like 90 decibels. And while those gas turbines are producing noise, which is measurably problematic, we don't yet know enough about infrasound other than the reports that people believe that it is making them sick, which is why many scientists feel that we have to study this more and that we have to get better tools to understand. Is infrasound making people sick? Well, we don't know, but we have to find out.
We also had news very recently that a Catholic priest, Stephen Rossetti, over in Washington, D.C., was fired, linking UFOs to demons. One of the explanations for this firing is that the Catholic Church has a strict policy against linking science, technology, machines to their religion. But again, at the end of the day, we really don't know what these UFOs are. We don't know if they're technology or even entities. Again, given the fact that we had news articles coming out and Navy reports coming out saying that they were doing just that, creating UFOs out of plasma. But going back to plasmoids, this great video from the Interstellar Discussion shows that they may have been here for a long time, and the ancient peoples have encountered them.
UFOs, plasmoids, and their intelligent behaviors. For those of you that may or may not know, a little while ago, you could check a previous video, I went into the fact that plasmoids exhibit intelligent behaviors, and scientists and other researchers in the field are now questioning whether this is a display of intelligent behaviors and some form of sentience, right? The fella sat beside me here is called the Squatter Man, and he's appeared all over the world for thousands and thousands of years from all sorts of different religions and aspects, right? And some archaeologists believe that the motive associated with the aurora phenomenon due to plasma discharge, specifically a Z-pinch instability, right? Check this out. What you're seeing behind me here is an example of where this symbol appears all over the world, right? So all of these areas here are all sorts of different cultures and things where this symbol appears, and then you've got the main Squatter Man here, and then to the left is the actual symbol for a plasma discharge phenomena that happens up in the atmosphere, right? So this kind of goes to say that back in the day, did our ancestors observe such an event where they were absolutely mind blown and they drew this as a representation of what they saw, right? Because it's a man and he's got two orbs around the side, and obviously a lot of this does represent to an extent with the plasmodial and orb activity, where throughout history, again, people have witnessed these strange lights in the sky, and there's paintings of them and all sorts of other different things, which is kind of interesting. Another set of symbols in relation to the plasma sort of entity that we've been experiencing. And so was our ancestors to an extent aware of, you know, scientists are talking about it now, that certain orbs and plasmodial things ejected from the sun can be potentially, theoretically, a level of consciousness or intelligence. There's some sort of display in nature there, right? And then obviously when we go back throughout history, the amount of cultures that praise the sun and pray down to the sun as a living being thing, like Helios or whatever other things that they pray to the sun for, if plasmoids are an extension of intelligence and consciousness, then that means our sun by proxy would mean that this bad boy is conscious and alive. And then where does that end? So if plasma that is being discussed in the field is a interconnectivity and can be aligned for consciousness to travel through, right? Where does this stop in the grand scheme of the cosmos? Are we just in a giant brain right now? Kind of like how mycelium fibers are with mycorrhizal mushrooms in nature that kind of build a symbiotic relationship with a tree, and all the networks connect all into all the other trees, and they trade nutrients, information, and other things that we are completely unaware of, right? But imagine that on a cosmic scale. All in all, I don't know. It could be just well, it is a great theory, and something that's just kind of been peeking in my brain and trying to relate it into things that we understand on a planetary level rather than an interplanetary level or on a cosmos level. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. I thought it was interesting, so look into it.
One of the very first videos I made on this channel was about a cryptid known as the Static People, and now I'm strongly wondering if these beings have any relation to plasmoids. I'm going to go ahead and play that video now. You are now within seconds of horror, because we are going to be talking about cryptids. The reason why I am so into the paranormal, strange, and mysterious happens to be because that's how I grew up. I grew up in a family where they shared stories of how they've been haunted, ghost encounters, and so forth. And a lot of these stories have stuck with me even to this day. One story that I was told when I was young, this was confirmed by all three of my family members, 2 sisters and a brother. They were around the ages of 6, 7, and 8 when this happened. Well, one night they were all sleeping in their rooms, the 2 sisters, and heard their brother scream as loud as he could. All of a sudden, they see him run out of his room, run down the hallway. He proceeded to go into their room, jump right into their bed, and then he hid right under their blanket, yelling, "He's gonna get me, he's gonna get me." Recounting the story, all three then said they heard the bedroom door shut, they look up, and they begin to scream. Because standing right there in front of the closed door was this very tall thing. This thing was in the shape of a man. It had a head, shoulders, a torso, legs, but it was very, very tall. And not just that, it was made of complete static. Static that you would see on TV. As all three were huddled together, screaming and crying, staring at this thing, it then proceeded to walk towards their bed, but it had a very strange way of walking. The upper half of its body was very stiff, but the lower half looked as if it was marching. When it marched to the side of their bed, it knelt down, grabbed a hold of their mattress, and started to make a weird noise that all three said they can't replicate to this day. Then it started to violently shake their mattress. Again, all three said it looked like it was made of complete static. It stood straight up, stiff as a board, turned around, and marched right out their room. When it left, it went right through the door. All three suddenly fled into their parents' bedroom. They didn't hear anything. They were fast asleep. I don't know how they did not hear anything, but they said it felt like when they encountered this thing, it felt like they were stuck in time. But the reason why this story has stuck with me to this day happens to be the way all three tell the story. You can tell just by their facial expressions, the fear in their voices. I have absolutely no doubt that they saw this static entity. So flash forward to today, there's a website that I like to go on now and then and read articles that has to do with, the strange, mysterious, paranormal. That website is called mysteriousuniverse.org. As I'm browsing the different articles, I happen to come across this one article back on January 18th, 2020, which is titled The Bizarre Phenomenon of Static Entities. And I said to myself, I remember hearing something like this years ago. This article starts with, the world of the paranormal sometimes takes a steep turn off the edge of the weird, offering up new phenomena that do not have any real category. One of these must surely be a collection of accounts linked to a phenomenon I have only recently become aware of. It all revolves around tenuous flickering beings that seem to be made purely of white noise or static, and which seem to pop into this reality to scare and confuse. Here we will look at a selection of reports of a truly new and difficult to categorize area of reports called the static things or static humanoids. Now, I wouldn't say they couldn't be categorized because they could fall under the category of cryptids like shadow people, or if they are there to scare and confuse and cause harm, then I could possibly say even demons. But what's even more interesting, this article continues to say, in many cases, these otherworldly beings seem to be particularly witnessed by children, and according to the very little research that he's found on these strange entities, they seem to almost be drawn to the young. Like I said in the beginning of the video, when my family members saw this static entity, they were around the ages of 6, 7, and 8. And this would be the very last time they would have such an encounter. Now, I also remember seeing a photo online, and it took me forever to find this photo, but this might actually show a static entity right next to a child. And this photo was taken all the way back in the 1980s. This article continues to say, they are most often seen by young children, usually from the ages of 3 to 8, or are seen in the proximity of children. One story that this individual found is that of a mother who saw one of these beings watching her infant son in his crib. Another tells of a young boy who went missing in the woods for several days after he followed the quote-unquote fuzzy man. He was eventually found alive and in perfect condition despite having been in the woods for several days. This came as a surprise to everyone who found him. The precise nature of their relationship with children is still unclear, but it continues to appear in these cases. Maybe not all of them are evil. Maybe not all of them have bad intentions, like humans. Some humans have good intentions, some have bad intentions. We don't know. This article mentions a Reddit poster called Nomura 2018 who says this happened to her when she was 8. Quoting Nomura 2018, who said she was sleeping on a lounge, all of a sudden I had a really powerful urge to look at the end of the hallway. We had recently brought a coat stand from a boot sale, and this was in the middle of the hallway now. As I stood there, I saw a human outline, but entirely filled with TV-like static. I remember little bits of yellow and blue in it, but was mainly white, and it came out the bedroom on the left, and was in a running stance, but it was really weird because it was in slow motion, and it ran from the left to the back door on the right. Like I said, these things have a very bizarre way of moving. But anyway, as it ran, it grabbed the coat stand and pulled it down with it, and it fell to the floor. I was just standing there after, in shock and so scared. I ran to my sister and told her what happened, And when we went back to the hallway, the stand was still on the floor. That was the only time I saw it. I don't know why I saw it or why it pulled the stand down. It was all just surreal. I did have some other experiences in that house that were paranormal, so maybe it was connected. This article mentions another story. A similar case comes from a poster called Joshy Bear, again happening in the confines of a home. In this case, the witness, who was a kid at the time, remembers getting up one evening to get a glass of water, after which he went into his parents' room. He doesn't recall why he went into the room, but feels as if he might have been drawn there by something, and that is when he had an odd encounter, he says. He was quoted as saying, "When I walked into their room, no door, I saw on the other side of their bed a huge humanoid shape that looked like it was made of static from a TV, except the white was purple and kind of like when you rub your eyes through your eyelids. I immediately just laid down and went to sleep right there and woke up there in the morning. Don't think I ever told anyone about it until years later. I was 3 or 4, so it's possible it was just my imagination went nuts, but it always stuck with me." Now, while these beings are mainly encountered by children, there are accounts by adults as well. For example, the article mentions an individual that's named Raxo5532. Raxo is quoted as saying, "I don't speak English very well, so I hope you can understand if I misspell. I try to tell you my experience with a static man, but first to enter in context, I am from Mexico, more specifically in a city called Cordoba in the state of Veracruz. I was living in a small house. In my room, I have a television. I have a television from the mid-90s which does not work. With that said, I will start with my experience. This happened to me 2 weeks ago while it was already dark. At approximately 12 or 1 in the morning, I was asleep when I woke up from a feeling of too much terror, feeling like someone is looking at me. I see in my room, looking if something is in my room, when I start to see a human being made of static. I don't know if leaving my television or entering this. I believe he meant that it might have left his television. I fear to get out of my bed and go to the door of my room where I keep a weapon to defend myself in case of an intruder in my house. Meanwhile, I see this thing disappear in a very strange way, like it's made out of smoke. I go to my bed to try to analyze what happened and try to sleep, and this is all my experience with static creatures. But whatever they are, they definitely seem to gravitate more towards the young, more towards children. And there are many commonalities between all of these stories. This article mentions and finishes with an individual who has a very strong interest in these static entities. He has spoken to multiple people, gathered and collected multiple cases. He's quoted as saying, "They always manifest as humanoid. They may have exaggerated features such as elongated limbs or inhuman faces, but their overall form is always humanoid. What this signifies is still beyond me, but it is an element that always appears. They aren't malicious. I haven't yet come across a story of them attacking or harming anyone. They scare people very badly and can appear very menacing, but they don't appear to have any malicious intent. This points to another intriguing aspect that I am currently investigating. They are intelligent. I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know if they're good, bad, or in between. But from the story my family members have told, from other stories I have found online outside of this article, they definitely produce some kind of fear, terror, and dread. And those that encounter it, they say that they're in their own space and time with it. That those that do not encounter it, but they're in the same household, they are not awoken or hear the screams and shouts coming from the individuals that do encounter these static entities. But in any case, if you want to hear me talk about more of these obscure cryptids or other paranormal content, please do go ahead and subscribe. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for your support.